Because there was no money to buy a house for my uncle, my grandmother forced my parents to divorce. My father didn't want to, so my grandmother gave him an idea. You spent 100,000 in betrothal gifts to marry her. If you divorce her and she wants to remarry, let her bring 200,000 in dowry. My mother happily went with my father to get the divorce certificate. No one knew except me that soon after the divorce, my mom would become a rich woman because of a lottery ticket to buy a house in the county town for my uncle. Our family was in a huge uproar. My grandmother was convinced that our family had spare money and demanded that my dad, as the eldest son, pay the down payment for my uncle's house. My dad was a mama's boy who treated my grandmother's words as sacred commands. Over the years, the family's money had long been taken by my grandmother through various means. She was well aware of our family's situation. She just wanted to use this method to pressure my maternal grandmother's family into paying the money on my mother's behalf. My maternal grandmother's family had already exhausted their savings for my uncle's wedding, and my mother's dowry had also been used to fill the gap. Seeing my uncle's new house, my grandmother couldn't bear it and forced my father to divorce my mother. My dad was unwilling, so my grandmother gave him an idea. We spent 100,000 in betrothal gifts to marry her. If you divorce her and her family wants her to remarry, they'll have to pay 200,000 in dowry. My dad's hesitant attitude hurt my mom's feelings. On her way back to her parents' house to cry, she picked up a lottery ticket, checked it, and found out it was the jackpot winner. She was very happy and told my dad as soon as she got home, "Lao Zhao, with this money, your brother can buy a house, and our family's life will improve." My dad happily shared the news with Grandma, thinking that without the need for a divorce, she would finally calm down. Unexpectedly, Grandma brought along my uncle and aunt, forcing my mom to hand over the lottery ticket. When my mom refused, the three of them ganged up and nearly beat her to death. Grandma even took a knife and chopped off my mom's hand that was holding the lottery ticket. "Once you've entered my Zhao family's door, you still think about keeping private savings. I'll kill you, you disobedient wretch." My mother, covered in wounds, was thrown by them into a neglected, foul-smelling ditch. At a young age, I was also sold by my grandmother to the countryside to become a child bride for a fool. My grandmother told everyone I was a bastard, afraid of being beaten. My mother took me to seek refuge with my biological father. The grandmother's family believed it and, fearing being pointed at, declared that they had already severed ties with my mother. My mother died from excessive blood loss, and her body was devoured by wild dogs. I was tortured to death by the fool's family, not even leaving a whole corpse. Grandma, uncle, and auntie, with that bonus, lived a prosperous life. My father also remarried. No one ever mentioned my mother or me again. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my grandmother asked my parents to pay for my uncle's house. "Don't hit me, don't hit me." I woke up from a nightmare, still shaken, and saw my mother staring blankly at her own hands, lost in thought. At that moment, I knew she had been reborn, just like me. Before I could say anything, our door was pounded with great force. "Open the door. Let me in, quickly. It's Grandma." My mother looked up, glaring at the door, her eyes filled with hatred, but soon, she reverted to the submissive demeanor of her previous life, stood up, and opened the door. Smack. "Oh, you shameless thing, you actually dare to hide." I was a few steps too slow, and when I came out, I only saw Grandma clutching her hand, grimacing and crying out in pain, while a fleeting smile crossed my mother's face. Yes, in my previous life, my mother was also a bit slow to open the door, and as soon as Grandma came in, she slapped her. It seems my mother remembers these details too, which is why she was able to dodge in time and make Grandma suffer a setback. Jiabao's wife is pregnant, and her in-laws want them to buy a house in the county town. As the eldest brother and sister-in-law, "You'll cover the down payment, I'll figure out the rest later." Grandma said the exact same words as in her previous life. My mother did the same, claiming that the family had no money. Grandma pretended not to hear. Wearing her old cloth shoes caked with mud, she wandered through each room, looking for anything valuable she could take home. Seeing that nothing had changed, she scowled and yelled at my mother, "You're nothing but a jinx. If you're out of money, why don't you go borrow some? Married into our family, all you've produced is this worthless thing, not even a son. What use are you?" My dad's salary card was held by my grandmother, and our family of three relied entirely on my mom for food, clothing, and expenses. This also resulted in me, already 10 years old, being as thin and small as a 7 or 8-year-old child. "Mom, you're here." My dad came back. He was well known far and wide as a filial son, always deferring to his mother in everything, fearing that she might be unhappy. Upon learning my grandmother's intentions, My father looked troubled but firmly said he would find a way. With memories from my past life, I looked at the mother and son before me, feeling nothing but hatred, but I couldn't think of a way to get back at them right now. I also didn't know what my mother was planning, so I could only stand quietly by, afraid of disrupting her scheme. Grandma said she would take Uncle and the others to look at the house, giving Dad 3 days to raise the money. At dinner that evening, Dad was so worried he couldn't eat, but I, having been terrified of hunger in my previous life, ate so much I couldn't even lift my head. Seeing that Mom wasn't sighing and moaning as usual, Dad tentatively asked, Maying, do you have any way to raise the money? My mother's expression remained unchanged as she calmly said, the betrothal gifts for our wedding are with my mother, go and tell her it's urgent, see what she says. My grandmother's temperament is no better than my paternal grandmother's. My father can tolerate his own mother, but he doesn't want to tolerate his mother-in-law. He smiled ingratiatingly at my mother. It's been a long time since you went back. Tomorrow, I'll go with you to visit, you can talk to them. My mother didn't say anything, which in my father's eyes, meant she agreed. That night, as I lay in bed, a mix of emotions swirled within me, and I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. When my mother pushed the door open, I jolted up, startling her. She sat down on the edge of the bed, her eyes glistening with tears as she quietly apologized to me. Mom, what are you planning to do? I didn't intend to hide the fact that I had also been reborn. Just like her. After hearing this, she was stunned for a moment, then pulled me into her arms, suppressing her sobs as she said, Wait, I won't let any of them get away. In my previous life, it was my grandmother's idea to ask my grandmother for money, but my father felt ashamed, and my mother didn't want to go. This time, my mother brought up her family on her own initiative, and I don't know what she plans to do. My grandmother was quite happy to see my mother after a long time, but my mother didn't waste any words and directly asked for money. Where did the money come from? I didn't even ask you for money when your brother got married, and now you're actually asking me for money instead. It's not that Grandma didn't love my mother, but in front of my little uncle, my mother was nothing. I could see the disappointment in my mother's eyes, but soon, she returned to her previous expression. My mother-in-law needs money, and we don't have any. Zhao Su said you must have some. As soon as my dad arrived, he hid to the side, not knowing what my mom would say. In his mind, he believed my mom would definitely take his side, so when my grandmother picked up a broom and hit him, he thought she was just unwilling to give him money. My grandmother didn't make a sound while hitting him. My dad dodged around, but he didn't understand why he was being beaten. When my uncle entered, my father probably felt his pride was hurt, grabbed the broom, and with a forceful pull, took it into his own hands. My grandmother lost her balance and stumbled to the ground. My mother made a symbolic move to help, but my uncle had already rushed forward and punched my father. You won't let my sister return to her parents' home, and as soon as she does, you bully my mother. You think I'll give you face? My dad is only a quiet, reserved person in front of my grandmother. Outside, he absolutely won't let himself suffer any losses. He and my uncle, one throwing a punch and the other kicking, fought fiercely with each other. My grandmother cheered on my younger uncle from the side, while my mother pretended to wipe away tears. I pretended to be scared and hid in the corner, realizing something. It turns out my mother didn't even intend to spare my grandmother's family, because my mother supports the family. My father usually treats her very well. He came home covered in injuries, angry and in pain, but didn't know who to vent his anger on. When Grandma brought my uncle over, my mom was applying medicine to my dad. Grandma acted as if she hadn't seen anything and immediately asked how much money had been raised. My mom applied the medicine a bit too hard, and my dad winced, saying, Mom, don't worry, I'll think of something. My uncle looked unhappy, munching on a cucumber he had fished out of the fridge. Mom, I told you earlier, brother won't be willing to give me money. He's living his own life just fine, and he's definitely cursing us in his heart for being no good. My dad got so anxious that he stood up from the sofa and expressed his loyalty to Grandma. Although Grandma knew my dad's temperament, she was still provoked by Uncle's words and scolded the three of us, my parents and me, mercilessly. At that moment, my mom spoke up. My mom has money, but she used it to buy a house for my brother, and the payment was just made recently. Upon hearing this, Grandma pointed at my mom and scolded her harshly. Shameless wretch, you have money and don't think to give it to me, but instead just watch your mother spend it. You good for nothing, I'll beat you to death. That's just how Grandma is, unreasonable, because she believes she is always right. She doesn't care where the money came from. Since my mom married into the Zhao family, and since my mom brought it up herself, if the money doesn't end up in her hands, My mom deserves to be beaten. My father stepped in front of my mother, who was crying and shouting, as she watched my father get slapped several times by my grandmother. Jiabao, come, we have the money for your house, let's go get it back. Having vented her anger, my grandmother called for my uncle to leave. She had initially wanted to call my father along, but seeing him crouch on the ground with his face covered, spit at my dad. Useless thing, do I have to handle such a small matter myself? After my grandmother passed away, my mother showed signs of discomfort. Lying in bed silently crying, my dad told me to prepare dinner, but my mom called me over, hugged me, and wouldn't let me move. No choice, my dad had to do it himself. When he called my mom to eat, he whispered, "Meiying, what if mom really breaks ties with your family?" My mom had been crying all along, but her tone was very calm. "Zhao Su, when we got married, you said you would give me a good life, but after all these years of marriage, whenever I suffer grievances, you only tell me to endure it afterward. How long do I have to endure, until your mother drives me to death?" Upon hearing this, my father's voice, filled with guilt, carried a sob. "Meiying, I'm sorry, my mother is getting old, and I can't just ignore her. I'll work hard to earn money and try to make your life easier." My mother asked him what they would do if her maternal family refused to acknowledge her. My father avoided the main issue, only saying that he would be there for her in the future. My mother didn't say anything more. After dinner, there was a knock at our door. It was my grandmother's neighbor. "Meiying, why can't I reach you on the phone? Your mother-in-law and your mom got into a fight, and both of them ended up in the hospital." My mother's tears, which she had just managed to stop, suddenly streamed down again. My father, in a hurry to leave, had to rein in his impatience when he saw my mother like this. "Meiying, hurry up and get ready, let's go to the hospital to see how mom is doing." My father didn't want to take me, but my mother still held my hand as she left. When my dad stopped the car, my mom whispered softly, "Nyo, endure a little longer, we'll be free soon." Grandma and Granny were placed in different wards. The doctor said that they were originally together, but the two kept arguing and cursing, so to avoid affecting other patients, they had to be separated. My uncle and my mom's brother also had bruises all over their faces. Both were standing in front of policemen, who seemed to be taking their statements, or perhaps preventing them from fighting. Again, my dad wanted my mom to take me to see my grandma, but my mom directly pulled me into my maternal grandmother's hospital room. "Mom, how did you get hurt so badly?" As soon as my mom saw my maternal grandmother, she started crying. Looking at my grandmother's swollen face and her sparse hair, for some reason, I felt a little like laughing. My maternal grandmother's voice was hoarse as she glared angrily at my mom and said, "Tell me, what madness has your mother-in-law, that old bitch, gone into? Why did she suddenly come to me demanding money?" My mother trembled, hesitating as she spoke. "My mother-in-law came to the house today asking how much money we've managed to raise. I told her we don't have any, that all our money went toward buying my brother's house." Who knew she would suddenly? The words themselves weren't wrong, but the problem was that my grandmother didn't know what kind of person my mother-in-law was. My mother had gone out to work and earn money at a very young age to support the family. After getting married, she always shared only the good news with my grandmother, never the troubles. Grandma only knew that my paternal grandmother was difficult to get along with, but she didn't know that she could be so shameless, daring to covet my money. "Meiying, don't you worry about this, I'll deal with this old woman myself." My mother murmured in agreement. Just as my father knocked and entered the room, he wanted to ask my mother to go take care of my grandmother, but seeing my maternal grandmother's expression, he couldn't bring himself to say it. Grandma saw through his intentions at a glance. "Zhao Su, my daughter married you and hasn't had a single good day. What kind of person your mother is, I don't need to say more. Today, it was your mother who came looking for trouble. If you don't want the police to take her away, drop the idea of having Meiying take care of her." Grandma was unreasonable, but she was somewhat afraid of the police. Because of the mutual assault, the two families settled privately, each paying their own medical expenses. I accompanied my mother to the hospital to take care of my grandmother. Grandma is in another ward, and her scolding can be heard from far away. Other patients' family members couldn't stand it and went to argue with her, but no one could match her sharp tongue. The hospital received 10 complaints in one day. There's no other way. As long as Grandma is not in any life-threatening condition, we should let her be discharged from the hospital and go home to recuperate. This also aligns with Grandma's frugal nature. Just before being discharged, she walked to the door of my maternal grandmother's hospital room and spent a long time cursing at my maternal grandmother and my mother. In the end, she was escorted away by the hospital security. The day after Grandma was discharged from the hospital, my maternal grandmother was also ready to go home, maying, "Your mother-in-law is not an easy person to deal with, we can't just sit back and do nothing. I need to go back and figure something out." My mom didn't tell my dad about my maternal grandmother being discharged from the hospital. When we got home, we could hear Grandma yelling at the door, "What kind of daughter-in-law is she? She didn't even show up when I was hospitalized. Just wait until she comes back, I'll beat her to death." My dad's voice was too low to hear what he was saying. I looked up at my mom, expecting her to be a bit upset. To my surprise, she had no expression on her face. "You divorce her. I spent 100,000 in betrothal gifts for your marriage, and if you divorce her, she'll have to bring 200,000 in dowry if she wants to remarry." My dad's voice grew louder, and I could roughly hear him asking what if my mom didn't want to remarry him. Grandma didn't seem to care. Her mother isn't any better, and she's got that burden with her. She can't go back to her parents' house. So where else can she go? Wait until her mother comes up with 200,000 to pay for your brother's down payment, then let her come back. It's just a matter of changing the certificate. You don't need to worry. At that moment, my mom unlocked the door with her key. Seeing my mother, my father quickly stood up, maying. Grandma rolled her eyes. "It's just as well you're back. Saves me saying it a second time. All these years and you can't even produce a son. Now you're still siding with your family. If that's the case, our family can't keep you. Get a divorce with Xiao Su right away. I'll find him a new wife." My mother didn't say a word, just kept staring at my father. Under the dual pressure from my grandmother and mother, my father crouched down with his hands over his head, sobbing loudly. But it didn't mean he wouldn't divorce my mom. Back then, my parents were considered to have married for love. My grandmother was impressed that my maternal grandmother's family had an orchard with good profits. She thought that after becoming in-laws, they could share some of the profits, so she was quick to pay the bride price. But the year after my parents got married, my maternal grandmother's orchard was poorly managed by my youngest uncle and was sold at a low price to someone else. My paternal grandmother didn't get any benefit out of it and would come to our house every day to pick a fight, just trying to get my mother to return the betrothal gifts to maintain family harmony. My father handed his salary card over to my grandmother, and that was the end of it. Unlike in my previous life, when my mother heard my grandmother telling them to divorce, she didn't cry or make a fuss. I just realized that these past few days, I haven't seen her shed any more tears. "Let's go, let's get the certificate. I don't want anything, just let Nyo stay with me." My mother quickly found the documents, while my father was surprised, but in front of my grandmother, he didn't dare say a word. Grandma wouldn't leave. She insisted on seeing my parents' divorce certificate before she could rest assured. Afraid that I would be mistreated at home, my mother knocked on the neighbor's door and asked me to stay there for a while. An hour later, my parents returned with their divorce certificate, and my grandmother watched my mother pack her things. She allowed my mother to take nothing but our clothes. As my mother led me to leave, my father chased after us, maying, "I will visit you, and when Mom is no longer around, I will marry you back." My mother and I moved into a small inn. The next day was the day she had found the lottery ticket in her previous life. Many things had changed in this life, and I was afraid that due to these changes, the lottery ticket might not appear again. Seeing my distress, my mother remained calm. "Have a good sleep. What's meant to happen will happen. Even without this lottery ticket, I would find other ways to make sure they don't get off easy. Yeah, even though I know my mom won't get back together with my dad, but aside from a few injuries, those responsible haven't faced anything that truly makes them suffer. I can't accept it, let alone my mom." Early the next morning, my mother left the house, instructing me to stay indoors and not go anywhere. I waited all day, apart from someone knocking on the door to deliver my meals. I had no news of my mother. I didn't know if she had found the lottery ticket, nor did I know where she had gone. When it was dark, my mother knocked on the door. She was carrying big and small bags, her face beaming with joy. Nyo, just wait a few more days. Once everything is settled, Mom will take you away." I only knew that my mother had found that lottery ticket again. I didn't know anything else. I have no idea where she went or what she was busy with all day. In the middle of the night, while I was half asleep, I seemed to hear my mom go out again. When I woke up and asked her, she just smiled and told me to hurry up and get ready. After breakfast, my mom took me to the milk tea shop across from the prize redemption center. This milk tea shop is very popular, with limited seating, and customers are constantly coming and going, all taking their orders to go. My mom and I sat at a spot where we could see outside. If you didn't look closely, no one would notice us. Around noon, Grandma and Uncle appeared outside the prize redemption center. Within a couple of minutes, Grandma and Uncle also arrived. I was puzzled and looked at my mom, but she said nothing, only telling me to wait and watch the show. Within 2 minutes of my grandmother entering the prize redemption center, an argument broke out on the opposite side. This area is a pedestrian street, and today being a weekend, there were many pedestrians on the street. Hearing the commotion, many stopped to watch the spectacle, for people fought their way from inside to outside. Grandma and Granny have loud voices, and even indoors, we can hear them clearly. You old fool. The winning lottery ticket is mine, hand it over right now, or I'll beat you to death. Grandma pressed down on Granny, trying to snatch the lottery ticket she was holding. Granny wasn't about to back down, her free hand grabbed hold of Grandma's hair. This is my lottery ticket. Who gave you the nerve to fight me for it? Uncle's younger brother was a bit stronger than Uncle's younger sibling, and because of the money, both of them went all out, just as they were in the heat of the fight. Aunt's younger sibling appeared, running quickly. Mom, husband, why are you still fighting? Let go quickly. She was pregnant, one hand on her belly, the other trying to separate her grandmother and grandmother. The two old women rolled on the ground, and it was unclear who exerted force, causing her aunt-in-law to lose balance and fall. Soon after, blood flowed from her lower body. When she cried out, "My child," the police finally arrived. Several people were taken away, and my aunt was sent to the hospital. Let's go, we'll find another place to watch the excitement. There was a small restaurant across from the police station, and we arrived just after the police car. As soon as my grandmother and great-grandmother saw each other, they started yelling at each other right in front of the police. Neither of them would back down, and in the heat of the argument, they even attacked the police just to get at each other. After seeing my dad enter the police station, sweating profusely, my mom paid the bill and took me away. Mom, what did you do? I really couldn't figure out what today's whole scene was about. My mother held my hand as she explained while walking towards the small inn. In her previous life, she lost her life over a lottery ticket. After returning, she had already bought the winning lottery ticket when no one was looking, but she didn't just buy one copy. She went out yesterday and indeed found a lottery ticket in the same spot, but unlike her previous life, she didn't pick it up and leave. Instead, she turned it in to the police station, asking them to find the owner. Although it's just a small piece of paper, the owner might not even notice it's missing, but if he finds out he missed out on millions, he'd be filled with regret. I wouldn't feel at ease taking that money. Perhaps the tragic death of her previous life taught her that some things not meant for her would bring retribution if taken, so this time, she decided to return it to its rightful owner. She used her winning ticket to exchange for money in the neighboring city. That's why she spent the whole day on this. In the middle of the night, she went out and placed 2 different lottery tickets at the doorsteps of her grandmother's and great-grandmother's houses. Each ticket had numbers that were slightly different from the first prize. This way, the winnings would vary, with some getting more and others less, if they met, and when Grandma saw that great-grandma had won more than she did, given Grandma's greedy nature, it would definitely cause trouble. This is exactly the outcome my mother wanted to see. She knows my grandmother well, and she knows my maternal grandmother even better. She knew that neither of them would ever admit that the lottery ticket was found right outside their door, and naturally, that means my mother wouldn't be dragged into it either. I thought my mom would do something extreme like my grandmother and the others did in the previous life, taking their lives. I've thought about it for a long time. Heaven allowed us, mother and daughter, to come back to change our own fate, but I can't do something as insane as they did, or else my conscience won't rest. I understand what my mom means. Although we hate them, if my grandmother and uncle were to lose their lives, we wouldn't be able to live in peace for the rest of our days, because we are human, not beasts. I told my mom what my grandmother did to me after she was gone in my previous life. My mom's eyes turned red with anger. I hugged her and tried to calm her down. The root of it all was that lottery ticket. My grandmother sold me, but it was that family who left me dead and dismembered. On causality, Grandma is the chief culprit, but that family, who now doesn't recognize me, is the true culprit behind my death. I recall some details from my previous life. Before I died, I seemed to hear the fool's parents say that the money had gone down the drain again, and they should have held back and not killed me. Think about it now, they may not be the first to buy a girl, and perhaps this could be the way for them to get their comeuppance. While waiting for Grandma's resolution, my mom hired a private detective to investigate the village where the simpleton's family lived. Within 2 days, he reported back, saying the entire village was very insular, and there must be something fishy going on in this day and age. My mom took the clumsy approach of writing an anonymous letter and sending it to the police station. In addition to my personal information, I wrote down all the experiences of my previous life, do my best and leave the rest to fate. It all depends on whether the police will take it seriously and investigate. The day after Grandma and Grandma were released, Grandma was taken to the police station again. This time, the person reporting the incident was my grandmother. My mother's phone, ever since she divorced my father, had hardly been turned on. When my grandmother and grandmother were taken to the police station due to assaulting a police officer and were detained, no one could find her. If it weren't for my mother taking me for a walk near the police station every day, we wouldn't have discovered what happened to my grandmother and grandmother. When my mother saw her grandmother handcuffed and walking towards the police station herself, she finally turned on her phone, having witnessed everything from the corner, because my uncle and father-in-law were still in detention. As my grandmother was getting older, the police always had to notify her children when they reported. After receiving a call from the police station, my mother brought me along, pretending to have arrived from elsewhere, and we coincidentally met my father at the station entrance. Meiying, Nyonyo, where have you been these days? When I went to your workplace, they said you had resigned. My mother ignored him and led me in with big steps. After hearing the police's explanation, we understood why the two elderly people had come in together again. Grandma had mentioned before that she wanted to clean up Granny, but she never found the opportunity. Last time they fought at the lottery center entrance, Grandma also figured out Granny's temperament. She devised a plan to let Granny hear where she had hidden the lottery ticket. She wanted to wait until her younger uncle was released in 2 days before going to redeem it. Sure enough, the second day after the two of them went out, Granny sneaked to Grandma's house and was caught red-handed by Grandma, who had been waiting. If it weren't for calling the neighbor for help in advance, Grandma almost got beaten to death by the stick Grandma carried with her. Hearing this, I realized that in my previous life, when my mother had an accident, it wasn't a crime of passion by Grandma. She herself is a ruthless and vicious person. Before, there was nothing she needed to fight for or snatch, but because of a lottery ticket worth hundreds of thousands, she was willing to take the risk. This time, although my grandmother wasn't physically harmed, my other grandmother couldn't avoid going to prison. After learning what my grandmother had done, my father ran to my other grandmother and knelt down in front of her. Mom, this is all a misunderstanding. My mother is old. Please forgive her. Let's settle this privately. We can't let my mother go to jail. Grandma ignored him and pestered my mom instead. We're divorced. Your mom's life is no longer my concern. Don't come bothering me anymore. It was then that Grandma found out about my parents' divorce. Upon hearing my mom's words, she rushed forward and slapped my dad across the face. How dare you call me your mother after getting divorced? Just as shameless as your mother. Get out. Leaving the police station, my mother refused my grandmother's offer and took me back to my grandmother's house. She said she wanted to take me to live in another city. My grandmother sighed but agreed. When I first came back, my mother was filled with hatred, thinking about the indifference of my grandmother's family in my previous life. But after these few incidents, my grandmother and uncle have suffered, and my mother has gradually let go of her obsession with the past. Moreover, my uncle is about to be released. Under my grandmother's influence, he is not someone to be trifled with. Whether my grandmother and uncle will have a peaceful life in the future is still uncertain, because I was asking for help everywhere, trying to save my grandmother. My father kept taking time off work. Already on the verge of being laid off, he became one of the first to be let go. Under multiple blows, needing money to pull strings, he forgot that he could go to the bank to reissue his bank card. Instead, he broke the lock at Grandma's house, and while searching for the card, a neighbor called the police, who took him to the station. It's funny when you think about it. Grandma was wary of our family, never giving my dad a key to her house and never allowing us to visit. But to save her, my dad did something foolish. And if Grandma didn't know, that would be one thing. Even if she did know, she would surely scold my dad, blaming him for damaging her door. Because of the miscarriage, not a single person from the Zhao family showed up. As soon as my uncle was released from detention, he was served with divorce papers. My father was locked up for a night due to a misunderstanding, and after a series of blows, he fell ill. As soon as he was released, he wanted to find my mother, but she refused to see him. After asking for my wishes, my mom and I chose the place where we wanted to live in the future. We didn't tell anyone and left the city where we had lived for many years. A month later, my grandmother called. She said she had installed surveillance since my grandmother suddenly showed up at her house last time. I never expected to see my uncle frequently loitering near her house on the surveillance footage. Out of fear, she reported it to the police and learned from them about my uncle's intentions. Having lost his wife and lacking the money to buy a house, he felt resentful and was determined to get my grandmother's money by any means necessary. Fortunately, the surveillance footage allowed my grandmother to notice his suspicious behavior early on, preventing a tragedy from occurring. Meanwhile, an official announcement was made. The XX family from XX village has been detained on criminal